Everybody, welcome back to the Insiders Lounge. Today we have another special guest, Linnea. Thanks for coming on, and feel free to introduce yourself.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so nice to be on the podcast. Linnea from a little town called Leksand in the middle of Sweden, and right now working as a football agent since about 5 years back. And that's short about me.
No, that's great. We'll get started with your earliest footballing memories. How'd you get started in football? Was it through your parents, or how'd you start playing?
Actually, it was through my brother, and the first memory I have is being jealous of him getting to play football, because we actually grew up in, even though I'm from Sweden, we grew up in Germany, because my dad used to play ice hockey there. So we moved there with the whole family. And in the town that we lived in, there was no girls' team. So my brother is 1 year younger, and when he started playing, there was no team for me. So I had to wait until we got home for the summer to Sweden to start playing there. And ever since then, since I can't remember if I was 5 or 6 years old, but ever since that, football has been everything. Like, I have all of my best memories, all of my best friends, and just everything thanks to football. And it's just been such a huge part of my life, and it's one of the things that I love the most in the whole world.
And we're speaking, you ended up working your way into playing university, I'll call it soccer now since it's in the States, university soccer in the States. Can you walk through kind of your career? So you started playing at an early age in Sweden. You want to go through kind of your whole career until kind of the university stage, and then we'll work through what happened next.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually moved already for high school, but in Sweden, to play at a better team, because in my little hometown, it was Division 3 that was the best. And I wanted to try to go higher than that. So I moved to a city called Linköping and played there during high school. And I always had this dream of playing college soccer ever since. Have you seen this movie called Bend It Like Beckham?
Yes.
Yeah, like super old about this. Anyways, I saw that probably back in 2001, 2002, when I was like 8, 9 years old. And they end up going to Santa Clara University in the end. So I always had this, picture of like playing college soccer in California. And so when I graduated, it was kind of more of a distant dream. But then one of my teammates went over to play in North Carolina the year before me. So that was the start of like, oh, if she can do this, then I should be able to do this too. So I hired the same recruiting agency that she was working with, and basically told them that I want to play, as good and add as good of a team as possible, and preferably somewhere where it's warm, like California or Florida. And ended up going to a school called Northwood University in West Palm Beach, and I did my bachelor's there and played 4 years, and absolutely love it. I can recommend going over to college to everyone. And I thought I was gonna play more after college, but I ended up not wanting to leave Florida. And since, it's so different over in the States, obviously, from how it is back in Europe, with it only being the pro league and nothing else. So since I didn't get drafted to the top league, I didn't have a team to play on, and I chose to take you can get like a 1-year visa, like an OPT, if you find a job after you graduate. And I know it's so hard to get a visa as a Swede in the States otherwise. So I was like, I'm gonna take this chance and stay here. And then I started working in the sports industry instead of playing, which I am still today.
We previously had Jack Metcalf on. I don't know if you know him, but he's also a FIFA football agent, and he had a similar path to you. He grew up in Liverpool, ended up playing for Clemson with his college soccer career, and then went on to play pro and go on to have a good career. He that journey of kind of being an international student and finding a way into college soccer isn't the easiest. So that's why we have. I know you ended up working for Athletes USA, and there's many different organizations that are kind of in a similar industry that are helping these international players come over. Do you want to talk more about that international journey for you? Like, you obviously mentioned that you knew a girl that had already worked with an agency to help you bring you over. But then you also ended up working for one. Do you want to kind of talk on both sides, being the player and then being the person that's actually helping bring players over?
Yeah, definitely. So first of all, I think that's such a great opportunity to have, and especially, I mean, now in the past few years, so much has changed in women's soccer in general. But like when I grew up, it was barely possible to play pro as a female footballer. So the American college system allows you to be like a professional,
Hmm.
even though it's college and you're studying at the same time, but you're also getting a degree. And that was also something that definitely, appealed to me, that I was going to be able to continue to play and do that 100%, um, and not having to think about doing something else for work, or like combining it with studies back home where it's very different because their sports and school is not connected in the same way, so it's harder to combine. So I think that is just, an amazing opportunity to be able to keep playing your sport and keep, you know aiming to, now you can actually go pro after too on the women's side as well, which was not really possible just a few years ago. Um, so that is definitely an opportunity that I think is amazing in so many ways. And then on the other side, like with knowing how my experience was and how
Yeah.
much I loved being over there, um, it was pretty easy to say yes when I got the opportunity to work for an agency helping other players. Um, and yeah, so it's been great being on both sides of it, and also obviously it's helped a lot with working in the industry of actually having been there myself and went through that. Um, yeah, it's definitely something that I recommend, both if you're a high school student in, I mean, obviously in the States too, but especially if you're over in Europe, to go that route. And it's also a career choice after that I highly recommend.
And I wanted to get into, while I was doing research for the interview, I saw you know multiple languages. You also lived in multiple areas. So I think it was Barcelona. Obviously, you spent time in the States, Sweden, Germany. Do you want to touch on some of the places you've lived, some of the languages you know, and how that's kind of benefited your career now?
Yeah, well, that has benefited my career so much, and I'm honestly so grateful to my parents who like dared to move to Germany when me and my brother were super young. We were like 2 and 3 years old, and that has just, it's given me so much in the sense that I think it's made it easier to make those choices to go to the States, and to move across the world by
Hmm.
yourself. I already did it once when I was super young. And I also think it's so great to, because this business is all about relationships, honestly. Like with the players, but especially with clubs and with coaches and sporting directors. And a big part of my job as a sports agent, like my relationships with the clubs is often, that can be the deciding factor whether a club is
Hmm.
going for one of my players or someone else. And I think having lived in different countries, being able to speak multiple countries and like relate to people in a way that you might not be able to do if you haven't seen more than one country, or just hung out with one types of people. I think that makes it easier to connect and to build trust and to form those relationships that are so important in in doing your job as well as possible. And I also think that when you work with especially the southern parts of Europe, there are a lot of, even at the top level, actually a lot of clubs that don't really speak English, a lot of them.
Yeah.
So like me knowing Spanish has been super valuable to be able to communicate with more people and connect in a different way without having to use an interpreter or someone to to take help from. So
I
it's
think there's
been
two like
you go on.
two key points in terms of communication. One is actually knowing the person's culture and background and the way, like, their mannerisms and how they act, and then also knowing the language. Like someone like me, I've traveled a lot, but I don't know a ton of language, so I might know someone's mannerisms and their culture and the way they act, but I don't actually know how to communicate with them. So I think you almost have both sides, where you've lived in many of these different places, as well as you actually can communicate with them, which is kind of the two key factors in negotiations and just relationships in general.
Yeah, definitely. And I also think that, like you said, with obviously the language is a big plus, but I honestly think the most important thing that I've learned through different living in different places is that there's not one set of normal or right. Like there are so many different ways of doing things and of being and living, and I think it makes you more humble and more open to different types of people, and it helps you deal with all sorts of situations that that you can be open in another sense, I would say.
So let's get into kind of what you're working on now. So it's 5-9 Sports Management. Do you want to go through what actually, because you mentioned it a little bit on the website, but what was the idea behind actually calling it 5-9 Sports?
So first of all, it's the opposite of a 9 to 5. A 9 to 5 that is like going to work just to make money, can't wait for vacation, you live for the weekend type of life.
Mhm.
And 5-9 is the opposite of that. It's doing what you love full time. It's about mixing business and pleasure, business and personal. Like I don't think there should be a distinction between the two, because I think we work best when we do what we love and something that we truly believe in. So that's one of the reasons. And then it's also there's this expression called 5-9 that is 99.999%, which is the purest form of gold. So that's why the logo is golden, and it also stands for the highest possible standard and genuinity. And then 9 has always been my favorite number. It's just something about it. Like it's always been my jersey number ever since I was little. And I just, yeah. And then when I came to college, one of my Danish roommates, who was not a senior, she was a junior. She already had number 9, so I had to pick another one. And then I got number 5. So then that ended up being a favorite number as well. And a fourth meaning is that
There's a lot of thought behind this. This is great.
it was definitely not random. No, but if you say 5 in Swedish, it's
Mhm.
fem. And if you put fem and 9 together, it kind of becomes feminine.
Okay.
So, and that's also one of my long-term goals to, in every way
Mhm.
possible, work towards a football world, but a society in general, where young girls and young boys have the same possibilities to
Mm.
dream big and achieve their goals. Yeah, so not
No, it's
random.
cool because a lot of agencies you see, or just businesses in general, it's either like someone's last name or just a
Yeah.
very generic name like that use a lot of agencies you see many have the same name just changed up like football agency in some sort of sense, but that there's really a lot of thought behind it, whether it was sometimes random maybe with some of the jersey numbers, but really everything was put together. So I like that a lot.
Yeah.
And so yeah, you were speaking a little bit about the women's side of the game there. So obviously we had the recent World Cup. The league valuations are constantly increasing. There's just this constant buzz now around the women's side, and it's really cool to see. I actually got to see my first women's professional game when I was in England. I watched Spurs and
Nice.
West Ham, and so it was cool. Like it was my first real experience of seeing this is what the women's game has become. When I was a young kid, there wasn't really any news or anything around the women's game. So you want to speak on kind of the shifts and the changes and potentially the future of where you see the women's game heading, and kind of why you've invested your full career and your full-time work on this side of the game.
Yeah, so I actually do work on both sides, but I've decided or like gravitated even more towards the women's game because I think, you know, there's so much that needs to be done, and that's where I want to put a lot of my efforts. Although I like working on both sides, but I think the trends are that it's getting harder and harder for, you know, random guys in the comment section to put no one cares about women's soccer because clearly people do, and it's gonna grow even more, and it's at an even higher rate over the upcoming years. There's still very little investment compared to how much it's grown. So if it's been able to grow this much with, you know, not receiving nearly half of the coverage, for example, in any media or news outlet, that just shows that there's a long way left until hitting a cap, and it's going to grow at a tremendous rate over the upcoming years, and so much has happened just in a few years, and it's incredible to compare to when I grew up or when I was little, and I'm not even old yet, but it's a completely different world. I remember seeing the first time I saw, like when I was in Linköping and seeing them play against Arsenal, and I think we were like 400 people in the stands, you know, and it was, for example, that was the first time I saw Kim Little, who is an amazing player who still plays for Arsenal, and I think they had 59,000 the other day in
Yeah.
the stadium, and it's not that long ago. Like this was during my high school years, which is 2009 to 2012, and yeah, it's amazing to see, and it's so cool to be. I feel like it's so cool to live right now in this time,
Yeah.
having spent your whole life in the football world and seeing how much just changed in such a short amount of time.
And I wanted to touch on, so you've been working now with 5-9, and you've started it up. What were some of the big highlights so far that you've had? Some of the cool experiences and some of the players you've been able to bring in.
So I think there's so it's so hard to
I
say.
know it's a difficult, yeah.
One thing that I think was really cool, that was, I think, about just a few months after I got my license from the Swedish Federation back in a few years ago, and I worked with a player called Julia Spetsmark, who signed for Benfica, and that was my first like big signing of, you know, just sending your your passport to them along with the player, and then flying you down to Lisbon, and it was the whole, you know, camera team following her around when she did the tour in their like museum with all the trophies down in the basement of the
Yeah.
stadium, and doing the doctor's like the doctor's check that you do before you
Yeah, the
sign.
medical.
Yeah, the medical. Yeah.
No, it's
Um,
okay, it's okay.
No, the medical was done, like, they have their doctors in the stadium, like, up in the, in Estadio da Luz. And it was just such, I was used to, have a few signings home in Sweden where you basically just send the contract over email and just,
Yeah.
nothing more. And this was a full-on, real signing in terms of that it was similar to how it's done on the men's side. And entering this big room with the vice president of Benfica and everything being super official. And that was definitely a big, a really nice memory early on in the career. And another thing is that when one of my players that I've been working with ever since she was about 16 years old, and she wasn't on the national team when we started working together. And I remember getting that first call, her calling me on FaceTime and, like, tears in her eyes, like getting the call up to the national team. Those are definitely two highlights among a
And
lot of others.
yeah, I'm sure. But you mentioned getting your license with the Swedish FA, and recently this has been quite a controversy throughout the whole world, really, with the FIFA licenses and the agent
Yes.
fees. So I thought this would be it was kind of the perfect timing to schedule you in a podcast and then to kind of speak on these topics. So obviously we've had the cases in Germany and the cases with many of the top agencies, Wasserman and so on, and then now with the UK, and they've all really gone towards the agents so far. Do you want to speak on kind of your opinion on the matter?
Yeah, wow, that's that's a big one. Crazy, like, so many things happening
Mhm.
in the agent world. I think the idea behind having more transparency and, a licensing system that is worldwide, I like that idea, and I think it's a good thing that it hopefully can prevent some people that shouldn't be in the football industry and that aren't in it for the right reasons to keep them out. Have no idea how good or bad it's gonna work, but maybe it will help to some extent at least, and that I definitely think is a good thing. But on the other hand, if the idea behind it is, more transparency, keeping money in the game, which is like why FIFA has implemented it basically, I would love to see that throughout the whole organization in terms of how that organization is run and transparency regarding who gets the World Cup or how everything, all the money is distributed throughout the whole world in the biggest sport in the world. And so I'm not sure if it rhymes with everything else, but
Mhm.
I do think it's definitely needed. I think it's good that we had to take an actual license test to get your license. That is absolutely a good thing in my opinion. But
And
on everything else, it's hard to. It's such a big matter. It's hard to. Yeah, I don't know.
no, it's okay. Sometimes it's best unsaid. We'll leave it at that. But we'll lighten up the
Share
topic
your
a
view.
little bit. We'll lighten up the topic a little bit.
What are
Some
your
people
views?
know. Oh, my view. Sorry, I didn't hear. I think I'm in a similar ideology as what you're thinking. I think that the overall generalization of having a structure, because there really wasn't anything. Your several separate federations were doing
Yeah.
their own thing, and it wasn't structured. So everyone was kind of doing something differently. So I think having that general structure of these are the standards we need to have to be an agent, and the avoidance of having a multi-agent where you're like all these different. So I know working from the Brazilian side of the industry, there's and that's why it's literally regional, because South America you have these different standards of doing work in the agency world. And then the European side, there's many different ways of how agents work and with clubs, And then in the States, there's like a whole other way of how agents work. And I think having just one general line of like, this is what we expect an agent to do, this is how much your fees will be. I think just finding the happy medium of the two. And then, like you're saying, if FIFA and some of these federations are willing to put these rules in place, okay, can we put rules in place for then everything in terms of, like you were saying, distribution of capital and the way World Cup bids are put through, and all the way down to grassroots football and how funds are distributed there. I think it's really important to have a structure, but make it democratic in a way that everyone feels either you have to upset everyone a little bit. So as long as everyone's on somewhat the same page and we can all agree to disagree in a sense, but make it an okay balance, I think that's kind of the key aspect.
Agree.
So we'll get into we'll lighten up the topic a little bit here. Some people might know sort of what agents do. They kind of see them in the back of photos when players are signing, and you don't really know the full story. So do you want to get into the full story of kind of what you do on a day-to-day basis? Especially as someone that runs their own agency, it can be sometimes different when you're working for an agency versus running your own.
Yeah, so that's also something that my friends always ask me, like, what are you even doing? But I would say it looks very, very different from day to day, but something that is always present is conversations, on the phone, on both live, but a lot over FaceTime, WhatsApp, Zoom, whatever it might be. The big thing that you're working on as an agent is, like I said before, it is your relationships and your network, and everything is always changing. Like, you need to not just maintain relationships and build new ones, but also stay on top of all sorts of topics, from regulations within the football system, but also, if you're working with multiple countries, there's visa regulations, and a lot of the times the clubs do much of it, but often you also
Mm-hmm.
need to be quite knowledgeable of it as an agent in order for it to work as efficiently as possible, and to advise your players as well as possible. So there's really so much to do and to learn on a daily basis that it never gets boring. It's always always something new, always some new challenge, often fun challenges. But yeah, very different, and a lot of talking to people, and just constantly learning new things. Yeah, I don't know if that is answering the question.
No, yeah, that it's good because one day you're doing admin work for because you're a business owner as well as an agent. So you
Yeah.
almost have these two categories. So you're doing admin work the one day, then you're scouting a player the next, then you're going to a football game, then you're talking to a club president. It's like this constant you have to be a really good you have to be organized, and you have to time things correctly. So you really have to make sure that your schedule is on point and that you're investing your time in the right categories. Because if you're just fully focusing on the agent footballing side, that's great, and you might be working out great deals. But then when tax season comes around, your business might be chaos, and your whole structure on that side is completely disorganized. So I think it's the key is balance over everything.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously watching a lot of football. Like, I didn't even mention that because I thought that was a given, but
Yeah,
that is
that's
also
like the given.
a huge part of the business. So yeah, you definitely need to love football. Otherwise you're not gonna enjoy it.
So we were mentioning some of the key points of your day-to-day work. Let's get into some of the challenges that you've had throughout your career. So we're going into kind of, I call them the Insider's Lounge favorites. We ask them for each guest to see kind of how they've approached life and the lessons they've learned. So the first one is just, what was one of the biggest challenges that you had either through your playing career or maybe your work career now? And how did you overcome that and allow it to kind of improve your lifestyle and the way you work?
So I would say maybe it's not a challenge in the way that your question is formulated, but one thing I always think is hard is how much of my own opinion should I tell my players? So like the decision making in every, like when a player is about to make a move, or just career advising in general, or life advice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a constant balance of trying to, give as much information as possible, but at the same time be objective, but still not too objective, if you know what I mean. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that the best decisions are made when it's like when you really listen to your gut feeling, because we know that depending on what study you look at, 95 to 99% of our intelligence is in our subconscious.
Right.
And we can access that through our like gut feeling or whatever you want to call it. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that is something that is usually the key to players making the best decisions and moving forward in the best way, to help them with just feeling confident and calm in themselves to be able to do that. And that is something that I think can always be perfected and developed, to have that, finesse or whatever it can be called,
Mm-hmm.
to being able to help them in the best possible way. That is a constant challenge, I think.
And if we have some, maybe it's one of your players or someone that's just looking up to you and finds your career path something that they're interested in and something they might want to follow. Do you have advice for someone that's kind of trying to follow that journey?
I think that it's a business that if you're not in it yet, it might seem saturated, or it might seem like it's, a lot of people wanting to be in it, a hard business to enter initially, maybe. But I would say that it also is an industry that always needs more good people. So if you are truly passionate about the game, and if you have good intentions about going into it, whether that's in coaching or as an agent or any other side of the sports business, it's definitely worth going into it with everything that you have, and to, not take no for an answer, not take no for an answer, and just keep going if that's really what you want to do, and be creative in how you enter the business, whether that's starting something on your own, or learning from someone, or finding a mentor to guide you of how to best go into the business, or get the right contacts to learn as much as possible before you do it. um yeah, I think it's a different type of business, in the sense that it's not like, oh, I have this degree now and I apply for this job and now I can work with it. But you really have to find your own way and navigate through usually a lot of challenges to get there, but it's definitely going to be worth it at the end, if that's what you really want to do.
And we're closing out 2023 now, heading into 2024. Do you have maybe a specific goal or something that you're looking forward to in 2024?
I have so many goals and things that I'm looking forward to, but one of my long-term goals is to be the best agent in the world with the happiest and highest performing players.
Very good. No, that's great. That's it simplifies it to one key phrase. And then the last one, it's kind of similar, but if we sat down to have the same conversation, let's say in 10 years time, where do you think you'll be in terms of your career, but maybe also your life and your own journey?
I really think and hope that I'm still doing what I'm doing now, but at an even higher level.
Mhm.
And a higher level to me would be where the players that I have right now are, thriving and doing even better. And I have most of the ones that I'm working with, I've had for a long time, and I'm so excited to see the next steps for all of them, and following them throughout their journeys, and being a part of their careers. And just, yeah, I really really think I'm gonna be in the football business for my whole life. Personally, I would love to eventually live in both, probably Stockholm and Miami, and divide the time between the two. And yeah, super excited for what's to come.
No,
What about you?
that's great.
Do you see yourself in 5 to
In
10
10
years?
years? Ooh,
Yeah.
that's I normally, whenever my guests ask me questions, I panic because I'm never used to being asked questions. I had Sahil, one of the other guests on the other day, and he asked me, what did he ask me? Oh, what I've learned from my podcast so far. So we're on, like, this will be episode 20, I believe. And so I've obviously been able to pick up on many different careers and the way people approach life. And it was a fascinating question, but it caught me because I didn't know what to say. But for 10 years, I think the same thing. Like when I was listening to you, when you find, one of the key things in life I found is when you find a true passion, which for me was football. Like from a young age, it wasn't even playing football, which I think most people have when you're younger. But for me, it was truly about the game. Like I was playing Football Manager, I was playing FIFA career mode, manager mode. Like I was really invested in the behind the scenes of football. And so I knew at 14, 15, I almost enjoyed being on the bench, which was a weird ideology for most players because you have that. I was truly competitive, but for me, it was while I was sitting on the bench, I was able to learn the game and watch it almost as a coach, which is really weird for a 15-year-old, but that was the reality. And so even now, I think, like you said, for the next 10 years, if there's something that allows me to grow in the game and just stay in the game, that's my true, that, like, that fixes what I enjoy. And so yeah, being involved in the game and then having something where I can consistently grow and measure that kind of growth. And it doesn't have to be success in terms of money, like that doesn't really bother me. It's more just opportunity and being able to, like, the World Cup is coming here in 2026, so that's one of my key goals, is to be involved in that and find a way to work within the involvement of the World Cup. Like that would be a true goal completed, in a sense, if you want to call it that. So I'm looking forward to, I'm always looking forward to the future, but I love to stay in the present, and I think that's kind of two mindsets that I have.
Absolutely, that's key. Definitely to be in the present as well, and it's something
Mm-hmm.
that's easy to forget, especially when you're playing and like always chasing the next thing. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's so valuable to being able to actually enjoy what you're doing right now too,
Mm-hmm.
because especially on the playing side, like a career is pretty short, so you have to enjoy it while you're
Yeah,
playing.
and you never know what's ahead of you, so you truly do have to enjoy it and be in the moment. But we'll get into some quick fire questions here just to wrap up the episode. Do you have
Yeah.
a favorite club, like either while you were growing up you supported them, or even to this day? I know once you get into the football industry, it's one of those questions where when you're an agent or if you work for a club, it's kind of hard to say your true passion. But do you have a true club that in your
Yeah,
heart you support?
I do. Especially when I was younger, Barcelona was my
Hmm.
first love in terms of team. Saw them the first time live in 2008 on Camp Nou. And one of my all-time favorite players is Xavi Hernandez. And I just love the way they play, the way that they develop players. And you mentioned about like, oh, if you're an agent, it's hard to like pick a team. And I think that it's something that I also admire about that club, that they have a lot of players that they have developed and they actually end up staying basically their whole life, which is quite
Hmm.
rare nowadays. And is something that is almost lost in football or in sports in general, like club loyalty. And I think that's pretty cool.
No, very good. Do you have a favorite quote or saying that you live by? I know some people have kind of something that they go to in the tougher times.
So I actually have a Joga Bonito tattoo. Do
Okay.
you know the expression?
Yeah.
It means play beautiful in Portuguese. And I do like that style of soccer, but it's more so about how I want to do business and how I want to just do life, where it's not
Hmm.
just about winning, but about winning in a beautiful way. So like your values behind what you do and how you win.
No, that's cool. We've never had a guest that has their quote or saying tattooed on them. That is commitment. Are you a reader? I know some of the guests, we always have this discussion. It's funny. For me, I really try to stick to reading, but I ended up reading a few pages and then I forget the book and then I pick it up a few months later. Do you like reading, and do you have a book that you go to?
I love to read, but I read so much when I was younger, and now it's like I don't take the time to do it. And
Mhm.
I'm glad you say it because it reminded me that I need to do that.
Yeah.
Um, and nowadays I basically just read, like every time I go on a train, I usually buy either science magazines or travel magazines. Like that's my reading now. But um and just contracts. No,
Hey,
but I do
whatever it takes.
I do love the Dan Brown books.
Hmm.
Not the movies, like the books. If you haven't read them, definitely do. They're so, you want to, like, every other page you want to go to Google and research, like, oh my god, is this true? Like, I need to find out more. And yeah, that's definitely some favorites.
Perfect. So you're kind of on the same vision as me, where you try to read, but it doesn't work out too well. And then some top recommendations for. I know you mentioned now you're back in Stockholm, so some top recommendations for Stockholm. One of the places I missed was Stockholm. So either your favorite food spots or just something you have to do while you're in the city.
Well, the first recommendation is definitely go in summer, like May
Hmm.
to September, preferably June, July, or August, because Stockholm is absolutely beautiful in the summer. You have to go and just walk around, go into as many cafes as possible. We have this thing called, have you heard about fika?
No.
So it's an expression. It's basically a coffee break, but it's typical
Hmm.
Swedish. So we have fika usually at every work or office. There's a few times during the day when you just, have a coffee break and have a chat, but it can also be meeting up with friends over a fika, like a coffee and like a pastry or something from the bakery on the side. It's like a typical Swedish tradition, I would say. Um,
No, that's cool.
but
And
yeah,
did you
go in
have
summer.
go in the summer? That's the key. No, that's cool. And
That's
then
key.
do you have any hobbies outside of football to kind of break? I know sometimes it's good to just break out of the mindset and completely forget about it, especially when it's your constant. I almost said 9 to 5, but your constant day-to-day work. Do you have something to just kind of completely ignore it and get out of that headspace?
Not on a day to day. Like football is so much of my hobby too. I also
Mhm.
love futsal, like playing indoor. But traveling is definitely my biggest hobby, I would say, outside of football. Which is great that since I don't have an office or like a set place where I need to be, that's also something that I've been able to do a lot after starting my company, and I can always work from wherever as long as I have my computer and my phone and decent Wi-Fi. So traveling definitely, um, preferably where there's palm trees.
Where it's a little bit warmer than Stockholm right now.
Yeah.
And the last one here, if you could sit down with one person for a meal, dead or alive, who would it be? And it doesn't necessarily have to be one. If you have like two or three, that's great too.
So actually, I'm not gonna pick someone in sports, but I would pick Beyonce. That's someone that I'm just so impressed by her in every aspect. She seems to have a work ethic, business brain, talent, creativity, and mindset that is just out of this world. Like she's broken so many records in all types of fields, and I would just love to hear about how she does it all, and like use that dinner as kind of her being my business coach, and like seeing
Hmm.
seeing life through her eyes, and like hearing about her experiences. That would be, I would just like sit there and soak up every little detail and knowledge, and I think that's something that would be super applicable to the sports world as well, and what I do.
No,
Yeah.
that's great. I really appreciate you. Sorry, I really appreciate you coming on. If there's any last words you have or anything that you want to shout out, whether it's the agency, if people want to follow the Instagram or whatever it is, feel free to do that, and then we'll wrap things up.
Yeah, put the Instagram name on there, and I think that's easier than me saying it.
No worries. No, it was great having you on. I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to catching up maybe when I'm in Stockholm again.
Absolutely. We'll have some fika. Thank you so much
Sounds
for
good.
having me.
Have a good one.